Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Jim Peterson, and welcome to Coffee Talk.
Hi everyone, I'm Kim Perlak. I'm the chair of the guitar department at Berkeley College of Music, and welcome to another Coffee Talk. As usual, we are joined by Assistant Chair Cheryl Bailey. Hey Cheryl, good morning.
Coffee cheers with my Berkeley guitar department mug. It is the mug that is on the front of the show, the actual one.
Wow, that's the original.
It's the original.
And you're in your Berkeley Guitar Department office. Oh, yep.
With the ghost. Yes, with the ghost.
Ghost. All right, we want to hear more about the ghost in a minute. We're also joined by Ian Steed, our senior coordinator. Hey Ian.
Hey folks.
And our guest today is Professor James Peterson. Jim Peterson, welcome to Coffee Talk.
Welcome. Thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. We're really thrilled to have you. Cheryl, before we jump in with Jim, what about the ghost? Because a few of us have thought there perhaps was a ghost.
Well, I started to get more convinced when Ben, who's very level-headed, said that he might have seen something. Perfect. Last night I was here about 6:30, and there's just an administrative office up above. And I come here and I practice sometimes, and sometimes there's strange sounds, and I'm thinking, man, I don't know. But last night, no one's around, and I heard stomping upstairs around 6:30. So who would be in that office stomping? Maybe a ghost, maybe.
It's possible, maybe a ghost. I mean, what's great about the guitar office is it has resumed its role as like a practice hang. So there's always somebody in there playing. But it is a little weird when you're by yourself. Maybe there's faculty members past hanging around the office.
Oof.
Did they give you any tips, Cheryl? Did you feel like more inspired after the stomping?
No, I was just very curious.
Okay, so a good vibe, a good friendly ghost. So Jim, what are you drinking? Are you drinking coffee this morning?
Yes, I'm drinking my Starbucks straight ahead, keep it simple, blonde roast, a little bit of brown sugar, a little bit of cream. Unfortunately, my Berkeley coffee mug is no longer with us. It met a sad end. Someone was moving some things in my house, and it sort of fell off one of the shelves. So it is no longer with us. But I have, my trusty mug here that I just use, and it seems to do fine.
That's great. I like brown sugar. I do.
Oh yeah, I use brown sugar. Brown sugar is a very, very, very versatile uh, thing to use. It's great for pan searing things. If you're making like if I'm cooking fish, salmon in particular, or if I'm doing something on the grill, I like to sort of melt it down till it's just like gets kind of syrupy, and then you use it as a glaze, and it's just awesome. So,
Jim, is that on a low?
tipping tip of the day.
Yeah, on a low heat. You just kind of get it to caramelize.
Yes, absolutely on a low heat. You definitely don't want to have it cranking. But yeah, you get it to caramelize, and then after, depending on what other seasonings you're using, I also love to use lemon pepper. We're going to be doing some swordfish over the holiday. That's going to be great. I think we got I think there's some tuna fillets over there too that we're going to be doing. So yeah, if you're doing it in a pan, yeah, definitely get it to caramelize on the underside, low heat, and just let it sit there after it's nice and well in seasoning, and it just works great. Love it.
I will be by for Thanksgiving dinner.
You're welcome. Come, please. We got on. Well, I mean, cooking. I don't know if everybody knows this. I think Kim, but I mean, cooking has been a hobby of mine for, oh God, I mean, forever. There's a lot of cooking and music analogies, things that go parallel, conceptually. Um, Maybe that's because I'm into R&B music, and a lot of times With funk grooves, you just got to let the groove marinate. You don't need to play anything. Like once you get it set, once you get it locked in, you don't got to play a whole lot of notes. The groove will do it. It'll do that for you. And yeah, so I like to call that just letting something marinate. Before you go back into the second verse or before you go into the bridge, you let the groove marinate for a little bit. That's just a fun term that I like to use.
I'm remembering, Jim. I don't know if the others know this, but you and I had this like daydream one time of doing concerts and pairing them with food. And this was when you were telling me about your mac and cheese situation. And
Oh yeah.
there was a lobster version. And then
Mm-hmm.
Jim had this idea like, what if we decided what music would go great with some food? And I'll be the chef and I'll come and I'll cook for the faculty. And, and it was always this great daydream. So it's true. I mean, the food has really connected you with music in a lot of ways.
It really has. I mean, I can't. A lot of the stuff that I used to cook, I just don't do it anymore because I'm older and I can't really eat the way that I, would like to. Because you want to be healthier. So I cut back on a lot of the certain ingredient. Not as much salt on a lot of things, and not as much seasoning and things like that. The mac and cheese. Yeah, I remember that conversation, Kim. Yeah, I think I did. I think one year for Thanksgiving, myself, we had some friends over the house, and I did a lobster mac and cheese with the big shells, the not the mini shells, the big shells, and Gruyere cheese, which is just fantastic. It's just so versatile, melts down great, real creamy, real smooth taste. Gruyere cheese, love that. And then I think there were some other cheese in it, probably some Monterey Jack, some sharp cheddar, some chopped up uncured bacon, lobster, probably some shrimp, and a few green peppers here and there. And it was just, and then I took a pic. I think I took a picture of it and I put the recipe on my Facebook page. Pretty sure. So yeah, I remember that conversation. I mean, there's a few of us in the faculty who cook, so maybe I wouldn't be the only one. I'm sure there are others who have skills too. So
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah, like that.
Jim, when you cook, do you follow a recipe or is there a bit of a mix of sort of a tradition of a certain dish with improvisation?
Yes, there's it goes both ways actually. Sometimes there is a recipe there which I tend to use as a structure, kind of like when you're playing over changes. You have this is the direction that the harmony is gonna go based on the arrangement. But then, yeah, there's definitely times where I'll take some liberty and just kind of go, what if I added this flavor or if I added that flavor? And it's a real, I love that comparison, Kim, to improvisation because I think it's pretty closely related. If you know what kind of flavor, how to use, for example, a basic thing that I teach with improvisation is contrast. Fast notes versus slow notes, a louder note versus a softer note, an inside harmonic note versus an outside harmonic note. Just different kinds of contrast. And sometimes I go for that when I'm cooking. Whether it's some sweet versus sour, something crunchy versus something that's soft. If you've I don't cook this anymore, but the I used to do a deep fried ice cream where what you would basically do is you would take a caramel patty, like what you'd put on a candy apple, and then you put that in a skillet with a little bit of oil, and it cooks very quickly. But it also hardens pretty quickly too. So before it hardens, you want to wrap that around a frozen scoop of ice cream. And then once you do that, you put it into a ball, you sprinkle whatever you want, and it's kind of, I'm not sure where I was going with that, but oh yeah, contrast. But just the contrast of how you can play an inside note over a certain chord and then an outside note, and then bring it right back so that there's a sense of release when somebody is hearing you. And that also works really well because it keeps your playing interesting, and it keeps the dish interesting as well too. So
Hmm. I think that's really interesting because so many times when we're having these conversations, it kind of comes up that after a while, the more and more you work on music, you're really working on yourself. And so the approach you have to music just starts to extend to everything you do in a creative way. And it's
yeah.
been fun because I think when we first just started asking everybody if they drank coffee, it was because of the name of the show. And now it gets into these really interesting places
Hmm.
where the way you are as a musician starts to become, it's really who you are.
Yeah.
And the music is a vehicle and other things might be a vehicle as well. So that's really cool that that works in your life like that.
If I could add too, um, I when I teach the first semester or second semester students or younger students in general, sometimes I have a different questionnaire that I use, just to sort of, figure out where things are at. But one of the questions on there is, are there any other hobbies or any other things that you have in your life, other than music? What other kinds of activities do you enjoy? And I ask that question because, there are so many parallels, that connect to other things that are so similar to music, be it sports, be it, studying in another profession, medical, engineering. You know, um, One of the things that I think about is with sports, no matter what sport you play, cardio is going to be a big part of it, whether you're playing basketball, soccer, football, whatever. I mean, you're gonna need cardio, and I think the way that that connects to music is that there's certain things in music that, before you get into a style, before you go into a certain direction, you have to make sure that you have the fundamental things in place so that when you take on that particular style that you're trying to get, you have the right tools in order to do it. If you go out onto the field and you don't have good cardio, well, then it's not going to go well for you, regardless of what sport you're playing. And it's the same thing with, definitely with funk music. I mean, with being able to play in time, being able to uh, deal with different harmonies that are coming at you, the ear training side of it, your dexterity, your phrasing, all of those things, you sort of have to think about them a little bit up front. And I try to get a lot of my students to do that too.
I think that's right. My brother was a strength coach for his most of his career and worked with really high level athletes, and they're just on such a regimen.
Hmm.
Whatever sport it is, these are the muscle groups you have to work out. And I think because he always said to me, well, it's because they're big muscle groups and they're playing contact sports. So you can't get around it in your mind that you have to do it or not. But when you're
Right.
in music, you can almost tell yourself, oh, well, it doesn't matter so much if I know that part of the fretboard or if I did my scales today.
Hmm.
And then, over time, it really does matter, not just for your performance, but also for the health of your hands.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And what goes hand in hand with that is you have to love it. When you think about what some of these athletes go through, whether it's MMA or a lot of things, it's really brutal on your body. You have to, you're kind of putting your body through a lot. Now, be that as it may, I think that one thing about music that I have found is there has to be a passion for it. You have to, on one level, you have to love doing it. And one of the things that I have to talk through sometimes with students is when, they're getting ready for a proficiency or something like that. And it's like, okay, we're going to do 3 octave, harmonic minor scales or whatever. Oh, well, I didn't have time to practice that this week and I'm kind of working on it. And it's like, I understand that, you get busy, but really, you know, the things that you love, the things that you're passionate about, you'll find time to do them. And for me, music has always been too quirky of a thing to not give myself over to fully. I have to do it. It's like if someone said to me, "Hey, man, you can just take a day off and just practice all day," I'd be like, "Yes," because there's so much that I need to learn. There's so much that I need to get together, and it's not particularly fun doing it, but the end result is definitely, and you think about like, wow, working your quads or whatever, that doesn't feel good, or doing abs, or that doesn't always feel good, but the end result is so worth it. And sometimes that end result is what you need to look at it to really get motivated, you know, to to push through, those kinds of things.
That reminds me of our conversation with Scott Tiroli about the hedonists, the philosophy. People think that it means, you're just going to go and eat and drink, but you're going to feel terrible later. But it's actually the opposite, is you're going to put in the work for that
Hmm.
joy. So it's the bigger picture. It's actually the opposite of how we use the term. But that thing, you're not every day. I mean, you've been playing those scales. We've been playing these scales all our life. I got to get up and practice today. It's not always
Hmm.
an exciting thing, but you put in it and you put your attention there, because when you're going to play and you want that facility, it feels so great. It's the best feeling in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're there, like, wow, this is like, it's right there. You can do whatever you need to do. You don't have to worry about it. I think one of the points I was hoping to make today, is how that, what you just said, Cheryl, how that connects to preparation. And it's almost like there's a chain of things that we can do to keep ourselves in the right mind space, to be effective musicians. And I teach this to all of my students too, is that the first part of that is the the strongest impression comes from the right expression. Okay. And it took me a while to learn that, but when you play from a place of expression, as opposed to impression. I'm not here to impress anybody, because if you allow yourself to be in that zone, the impression zone, then you're kind of setting yourself up for all kinds of things. You're like, well, what if they're not impressed? Or, oh no, what if I don't do well? And what if this goes wrong? What if that goes wrong? Because you're kind of thinking about, I got to make an impression. I got to do this. But I personally think that the truth is focusing on what you're expressing. What do I need to express, musically, to be successful in this, um, situation? It's kind of like, a student comes in taking a test and they feel kind of nervous, and it's like, wow, you're so nervous about the test. But what if I said, hey, man, tell me about your dog? Tell me about your favorite movie. Tell me about your favorite hobby or whatever. All of a sudden, all of the angst just goes away, and it's like, oh yeah, my dog is awesome, or I saw this great movie the other day and it was great, and you're not worried because you're expressing something that you are excited about. And when you do that as a musician, when you learn that, okay, I'm feeling something, and I want to make my listeners feel what I feel. I want to make them feel excited, or I want to move them emotionally, or I want to make them feel like they want to run through a brick wall, or I want to do whatever I got to do to bring them to this headspace of what I want to express. And that's something that I think the musicians that have longevity, are able to do. They make you feel what they feel, because as important as it is to learn. I mean, I'm all about chops and theory and whatever, as anybody else, but I also realize that people are going to come see me play because of how I make them feel. Now, if however I need to facilitate that, okay, that's it might be a different discussion. Do I need to play something up or fiery or something like that? And I'm okay with that if that's how I am feeling. But if I can get them to the space where they're feeling what I want them to feel, or I can take them back to a certain place in their life. Expressing all of that, I think, is where all of that begins. And then the tag on that is, it's not to say that, we don't work on chops, we don't work on, technical things. I mean, that's very, very, very important, but we just got to have our priorities right, because there's always going to be something that raises the bar, technique wise. But if, the one thing about great music, that's iconic music, is that it always makes you feel a certain way, and that's what I want to try to teach my students to do, and I want to be able to do that myself. So
I love that, and I think what you're saying in that statement and in the one before, they feed each other, right? Because if you are open to being expressive, all of the technique and all the chops and all your fretboard knowledge, all of that just feeds that. It's so that you can try new things and they'll be there. And if you don't have one, it's
right.
really hard to have the other. And then if you have that expressive value, then you're always
Hmm.
curious. You're always curious. You're not getting in your own way by trying to impress
Right.
people. Um,
Right.
we had a group of students, some of whom work in the office, and they made a pact to practice every day. And they made a list of the things that they usually avoid, like you were talking about, like their scales and their triads, but also their intervals, like their diads. And we watched them. Cheryl and I watched them, and Ian and I watched them do it every day. And the other
Hmm.
day, one of them was in a class that I teach, and we were doing something totally different. We were doing scales with open strings.
Hmm.
And she, all of a sudden, everyone was kind of trying to work it out, figure it out. And she just went to it, and she could do it. And she was like, oh my gosh. And I said, wow, you got that really fast. And she said, yeah, it's like, I've been doing those scales every day, and now I know where everything is. Like, I just know where everything is. And I thought, yeah, that's
Hmm.
right. That's why you do it. It's not just so you're doing that thing and you're not just judging whether or not that is applicable. It's helping you do all these other things you haven't even thought about yet. So I think that your openness to both aspects of playing is really important for people to hear.
Mm. Yeah, music is a language. And in the same way that we use nouns and verbs and, consonants in the words that we use, we had to learn all of that at some point. We had to learn the alphabet at some point, and there was a lot of repetition, because now, as we're older, we don't think about, like, I certainly couldn't tell you how many nouns I've used in the past two sentences that I've said, or how many consonants or vowels were in each word. We don't think about those kinds of things, and because the formative time of us learning the language was so thorough, and I think that's really key to playing great guitar too, is that you have to get the mechanics of the language down so well that when you're ready to express something, you need only focus on what it is that you're communicating, and it just flows. It just kind of, it'll start to flow right out, just like as you're expressing whatever it is, just like you're talking, so that's kind of huge.
Jim, in the beginning of this conversation, you mentioned that you give your incoming students to private lessons a questionnaire. Can you talk
Hmm.
a little bit about what you do?
Sure. Yeah, it's a questionnaire that sort of helps me assess, where the best place to start them as a student is. Um, and it also helps them to focus. Um, on that questionnaire, there are a lot of, what's the best way to say it? There, I guess my goal is, through asking questions, I want students to think that, I want them to realize that, there's a new season in your musical journey that's starting right now. And as you're starting up, there are certain things you need to think about. Like, one of the questions is, what what best describes your goals on guitar? Uh, A, I want to be the next Jimi Hendrix. B, I just want to jam with my friends and lay down some tracks. C, I only do it as a hobby and just to jam with people on the weekends. And D might be I'm not exactly sure yet. And a question like that is important because I think one of the things we all have to do is learn how to set goals. There's especially with music. There's a proverb that says, "He who aims at nothing will certainly not miss his target." And you know, the music industry in general can be pretty tough to make a solid living in. I mean, it can be done, but it's tough and it's changing all the time. And with my questionnaire, one of the groups of questions that I address is about setting goals. What role is guitar going to have? Think it through because things are changing so quickly. I want the incoming students to realize take some time and just give some thought into what your goals are. So therefore you can set your short-term goals accordingly so that you can hit the goal that you want to ultimately be at. And another question on there is how much time per day will you commit to practicing realistically? And then I will allow them to say, what that may be. And then what I find is after a couple of weeks, students will come back and go, hey, can we go over that questionnaire again? Because I think there's some things that I might want to adjust. I mean, I want to do this, I want to get to this point in my guitar playing, but I'm only willing to practice an hour and a half every day. And then they start to realize that, oh, wow, you mean, okay, so in order to be a session man or to do whatever it is that they're trying to do, it's going to require more than what they might have realized. And then we will talk that through and, I'll help them with a practice plan or something like that. So that's just to give structure, to help them set goals, and really prepare for what's coming down the pike. I mean, it amazes me how much the music industry has changed just over the past 10 years. You know, how long has YouTube been around? Since '04, I want to think, 2004? So that's about 16, 17 years ago. The whole thing with the streaming services, different things like that. And then the other kind of technology that is already on the horizon. It's pretty easy to think that the way music is consumed now might not be the same 5 years from now, and it's important to plan accordingly. So that's the whole, in a nutshell. I hope that answers the question. I don't know if that's clear enough to.
Yes, it definitely answers the question. And Cheryl, you love the proverb so much. I'm gonna throw it over to you for a second. To
Well, there's a lot of things in. I've been trying to keep track, Jim, because you're just blowing me away here with all just really words of wisdom on many levels. But it's interesting because actually yesterday I teach a harmony class for performance majors, and it was the segment of the semester where we talk about practice techniques. And so, I go around everybody and go, what did you practice today? Did you warm up, or what do you do? And these are all high level students and very responsible students. And we had just a great conversation about how you use your time. And, that just even in school, it's a great place to learn that, how to make a practice schedule and get things done, because it doesn't get any easier actually when you're out there playing professionally, right? You got to travel, you need to have music prepared, you maybe need to write music, all these things. And I mean, I just feel that even talking about the sports analogy, or you see a great athlete, or you see just anybody, a great public figure, or just a great parent or community person, you're looking at somebody who knows how to use their time. And one guy said to me one time, said, well, the year's going to go by And so I might as well start working on my reading, because the year's going to go by. And if the year goes by and I didn't get anything done, who it all comes into, all there's actually another kind of Buddhist phrase, all blames go into one. You know what I mean? Like you have to
Mhm.
take responsibility for that. Like, well, the year went by and I didn't crack open a reading book, something to
Right.
read or find a teacher to help me study that.
Right.
And so am I going to let another year go by? Like just learning how to be responsible for your time. But
Mm.
then also the effectiveness of how much you can actually get done when you do that. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Even if it's like, I have, you look at I only have 45 minutes today to really practice because I got to do all these other things. It's amazing what you can do in 45 minutes if you're organized about it. And then the days when you have, 4 hours or something, okay, great. You're going to expand that, but you've got to be in control of it or it will control you. Right.
Mm-hmm. Boy, is that the truth. If I would like to share a story kind of connected to what you just said, Cheryl, is that one of the and this is something that I maybe I learned later. I kind of knew it, but this is the first time that it actually came to fruition. When I was going to Berkeley, and I mentioned I had an issue with my eyes, but learning how to read, it just took me a long time learning how to read music, how to do it well, and be a functional reader. And I lived out west for a little while, and I was in a lot of situations where sometimes there would be a chart, sometimes there wouldn't be. So I got to a place where I just didn't think about it that much. It was like, well, if I have to read, I'll read. If I don't, I don't. But a couple of years ago, I was playing at the Gardner Museum with a pretty famous jazz singer. I mean, I don't particularly like to name drop, but um, she's a great singer. She plays upright bass, and went to Berkeley as well. And she's just fantastic. And I believe she's teaching at Harvard right now. It was Esperanza Spalding. Just I guess it's okay to say that. But it was a thrill to be on that gig. And it's funny. So we do the sound check. I'm playing acoustic guitar, and I I did this at one point. We're in the sound check, and I just kind of went, just kind of messing around, just checking the sound. And that's a Stevie Wonder tune called "Overjoyed." And Esperanza does a brilliant arrangement of that song, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I know that song." Only she doesn't do it in the key of E. She did it in like E flat, and or I think it was E flat or F, or I don't know, a key that I wasn't really familiar with. I mean, I'm familiar with those keys, but that song happens to take a lot of left turns, and the voicings are kind of interesting. And then someone said, I don't know who said it, but someone goes, "Wow, you guys should just do that acoustic guitar and voice." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, um, this is not good." So we run through it, and oh boy, I know that's chords. If you've ever run through something and you're like, "I know this is the wrong chord, but I'm not sure what to play," and you just try to make it work, and it clearly wasn't working. And she was so sweet; she didn't want to say. It was like, "Wait, is that the right chord there? Wait, that might be a B." And it's like, "Okay, I get it." And my friend Simone was there at the museum, and he was like, "Hey, bro, I got you, man." And he went, found a chart of Overjoyed somewhere online, found the chart, did something in Finale, and transposed it, and just gave it to him. He was like, "Hey, man, I got you," you know. And he gave it to me. I went back, and I mean, like it was piano voicing, so it was kind of like, okay, it wouldn't be like uh, G. It wouldn't be like E major seven. It would be like, I don't know, like F sharp or G sharp minor over E, or some kind of weird thing, like that. But anyway, I was able to make sense of it, looked at it a couple of times, and just brought it out on stage with me and put the music stand like right down next to me so nobody could see it except for me, and just basically read it, read through the tune, and it went fine. But the lesson that taught me was you never know when you're going to be in a situation where you're going to need to read something, or where you're going to need to play something in a weird position because it was written by a violin player or a horn player, and you got to play this lick and it's not going to fit with the typical guitar scale fingerings, and you just got to make it work. And I think, I mean, that might be the long way around the block, Cheryl, but I say all of that is because the whole thing with practicing, if you want to be, we all want to be as good as we possibly can. We want to be able to function in any situation. And what that basically means is training yourself to be able to do multi, multi things, arpeggios, reading, fretboard geography, whatever it is, all of that stuff, fitting that in your practice, and loving it and being excited about it, being like, yeah, I get to work on my reading. Man, this is awesome. I mean, I'm going to be able to walk into a situation and be able to, read if I have to, or be able to play this or play that. And hopefully that's a motivation, because that's what's required when you get to that next level. So I just wanted to throw that out there, kind of on the tail of what you shared.
No, I think that's great, because that's the thing. We don't know what is gonna, you set out with an intention. Oh, I'm just gonna do this, and then your career throws all kinds of left turns at you.
Hmm.
And when you love music and playing the guitar, it's all joyous, right?
Right. It's not arduous. It's not like, oh, I gotta work on this again. I mean, I'm sure, you don't see Tom Brady or somebody like that going, man, I gotta go stretch again. I gotta go do workouts. I gotta drink another cucumber protein shake again. I mean, it's obviously what the guy likes, and it keeps him functioning at a high level. And that's, you like I said before, I mean, I think music is, if you don't give yourself over to it fully, it's it's like the person who just kind of walks away from you, because you're not willing to to do what they need you to do in order to keep the relationship strong. And that's kind of that's I just feel like that's personally important. So
Also, Jim and Cheryl, this seems to be the answer to the question that Jim alluded to earlier. How do you prepare for a musical landscape that changes and changes professionally? In some ways, really preparing yourself to be adaptable and to be strong in your skill set, um, and to be ready for what might come. That's what helps you become ready for the changes that may come. Is that how you think of it?
for me,
Hmm.
yeah, I think of it as keeping keeping your hand on the pulse of where things are going, and and where things have come from. A lot of people talk about these, competition shows, The Voice or something like that, whatever. And I don't watch them, but something struck me the other day. I was scrolling through the channels, and I saw a show where it wasn't even live people singing. It was like you make this cartoon version of yourself, and then you go out and you have that character sing the song, but it's somebody's voice somewhere backstage, and it's just, and I'm thinking to myself, look at what we're dealing with here. We're at the point where we're not even, the technology is changing so fast. Now I don't know if it's going to be a hit show or whatever, but you have to think, how is that going to impact, say, something like live performance, with the hologram technology, things like, you see that with Peloton, and with a lot, the mirror and all of these workout things where, it's not a person training you, it's just a pre-recorded image of some kind. I'm not sure how they do it, but will that have an impact on live performance? And if it does, is that something that I, as a young musician, can capitalize on? Can I put a band together and do that instead of paying all the money to keep an actual live band out on the road? I mean, I don't know if that's physically possible. I'm just throwing this out as like, as a possible scenario. But just kind of looking at what's going on and what that could potentially lead to, and really keeping an ear to the ground, really being using your imagination. I think getting a lot of advice. I think going to conferences, going to things like the NAMM conference, a lot of network. I think all of that is a great way to sort of get an idea on where things are going to be headed, and where it might be a good idea to try to make an adjustment into. It's funny, Cheryl, I know you went to Berkeley, right? And I know, I can't recall if we were there at the same time, but I know that when I was there, the big thing was practice like crazy and get a gig with somebody. Oh man, did you hear about so and so? He's out gigging with Chick now. Oh yeah, so and so got the gig with Weather Report. Oh, so and so got the gig with my, whatever. He's playing with her. Oh yeah, like Johnny Blackwell, my friend, got the gig with Prince. I remember that, because we were hanging out together. And it was like, that was the thing. Now, well, that's not so much the thing anymore. I mean, it still happens. Obviously, it still happens. But there's a lot more options out there of where people can wind up. And I only say that because when you look at how broad the industry has got from that point until now, all the different directions that you can go in, I think it's more important than ever to try to keep an eye on where things are potentially going. So,
Jim, what do you remember about your first days at Berkeley as a student or as a faculty member? What are some of the things that stick out to you still from that time?
as a student, gosh, I mean, I was a teenager, and coming into a situation that was pretty overwhelming, quite honestly. Trying to just get up to speed with everything that was going on and wrap my mind around it. It was pretty overwhelming, and it took me a while to settle into, um, the environment. I think in a way that was good for me, because it really pushed me to, hey, it's time to start. It's time to get it going. It's time to get serious. Um, and I remember you were talking about the 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 folks in the guitar office. Um, I also had a group like that as well. I mean, it was myself and a couple other guys, and we were always pushing each other to learn this or learn that, or I can play this quicker, or you can play, how do you play that? No, he didn't finger it that way. He uses his third finger. No, 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 no. It's, we would just like basically geek out. I mean, to the max about like everything guitar. And not only everything guitar, but, it was like that with music theory. It was like that with ear training. And I think once I settled into, this is the reason why I'm here, I think things kind of got a little bit more settled. And I started to feel a little bit more comfortable with the whole Berkeley thing. As a faculty member, it was, I wouldn't say it was overwhelming. It was just, it was a real privilege to some of my colleagues, some of my teachers were now my colleagues, not a few of them, but a few of the folks that I studied with as a student were still teaching at Berkeley when I came onto the faculty. So getting to know them as colleagues, I thought was really helpful. It was helpful kind of drawing from the knowledge of people who had been teaching there for so long, and seeing the working of Berkeley from the inside as opposed to the outside. Really learning that it's not the easiest thing in the world to be an effective teacher. you really got to work for it. You really, really, really got to prepare, and you got to be dedicated, and you got to have the kind of character and patience. And I kind of did the best that I could to commit to having those things, and just kind of worked on it, and just kind of really became an observer. Really became, watching the people that I thought were really doing a great job. And there were so many, people that I could name. I mean, John Finn was there, and Bruce Bartlett, my old guitar teacher, was teaching at that time, and uh, a lot of folks, that I really, really looked up to, and just kind of watching them work and be effective just helped me so much. And then once I settled into, what my role was, I just tried to just dig in and work hard, and do as much as I could to be as effective as I could. It's the long and short of it. Of course, there was also the performances too. There was like, because when I got on faculty, I did a lot of recitals and things like that. Some of which have wound up on YouTube, to my dismay, but it is what it is. Little snippets of performances there. Um, but that was kind of interesting as well, because I really knew that it was important for people to get to know what I could do, and what I was trying to bring to the table. I thought that was important. So, and then I just kind of learned along the way from there.
I think a lot of students are wondering what that feels like to start to work with your teacher as
Hmm.
a professional and kind of make that transition. In
Yeah.
some ways, like maybe you always feel like they're your teacher, but kind of continue that relationship in a different way. And is there anything specific you remember about that experience with Bruce Bartlett for you?
Well, Bruce wasn't. When I first got to Boston, he was doing, a gig at Riles with Baron Brown and a couple of other folk. Sometimes he had a keyboard player, but mostly it was just him and his trio. So, when I got with him, he wasn't teaching at Berkeley at that time. But when I came at faculty, lo and behold, he was there. So it was like, oh, funny meeting you here. Um, but I think in answer to that question, it was just, you kind of, for me, I just kind of got to a place where it was like, hey, I just need to be real about what's going on here. And, is it okay if I kind of watch you do your thing? Is it okay if I kind of ask you questions? And most of the time, uh, whoever I spoke to, whatever faculty member that I was, had history with, or, because John Baboyan also, comes to mind. There was just help there, knowing that there was help there, and the relationship, changes. Um, at the end of the day, as a student, I was just trying to do the best I can. Okay, well, now I'm your colleague. I'm going to continue to try to have that same kind of commitment, and same kind of, you know, desire to be as good as I can. And, I just kind of got to know folks on a, different level. I mean, I didn't get to see Bruce a whole lot, but I mean, we did get to, before the pandemic. I mean, we would, I would be able to go up to his office, and we would jam and stuff like that, or, um, just things like that. You know, bonding, getting to know each other. The teacher student thing kind of kind of dissipated after a while. I think it's kind of the only way I could explain that.
Cool, thanks. Hey, Ian,
Yeah.
what's on your mind? What's on your mind?
Yeah, I mean that's all really like fascinating. Just thinking about you know, I don't know. It's really inspiring also to see, the work ethic as a student that you talk about, and then continuing it on as a faculty member, and also just like thinking about. I don't know. I mean, it's in a way, it's like hearing you talk about it is like part of you is always in music school. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And Even if, I would even like, it sounds like even if you were to have gone and done something else, if you weren't teaching, if you were just playing, if you were doing something else, that a lot of that work ethic would really be continuous, right? Like you would still be on that same path,
Hmm.
hearing you talk about it that way. And also, like, I really love, like, it can be a little verboten for some folks to make uh the metaphor to like being an athlete because it sounds too competitive or it sounds too, I don't know, but I think it makes so much sense. And the way you were talking about, maintaining the love for it, like there's like this desire to practice, but also sort of like the feeling that you have to do it. It's just like the feeling of I have to go work out, I have to go exercise. And if you put so much pressure on like I have to do this thing, like it can get harder to do it, right? And the less you do it, then it becomes even harder, right? But once you start to do it,
Hmm.
the just do it, like once you do it, it's great. It
Yeah.
feels great. You're doing it exactly.
Just, just,
Okay, I
uh,
was thinking about that slogan of a very famous corporation, for the folks at home, and it turns out uh, Professor Peterson has that written on his shirt. I could not see.
I mean, hopefully that's not, I'm not breaking any rules by having
No, no,
an
you're good. You're
insignia
good.
on my shirt. So it just happened to work out that way. So yeah, you know, when you talk about work ethic, see, the other thing for me is that I honestly felt like, what else can I do? If I'm not going to Berkeley, I mean, am I going to wind up in a situation where I'm saying, "Hey, would you like fries with that?" I mean, I don't want to. It's something where I really wanted. It's a direction where I really wanted to put myself, and I felt like if I am to make this work, if I am to succeed, then I gotta work hard, and this is something that I feel like I'm good at. So yeah, I appreciate your saying that, Ian. Thanks.
Yeah, and also the fact that it's not even just to succeed, it's like an intrinsic value in doing it, right? It's
Correct.
there's like so there's like this sort of arc that happens when people go to music school, right? It's like we have this intrinsic sort of love for music and it causes us to practice and play and to explore the instrument. And then when you really go to music school, all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is like an assignment, this is work, this is like this thing. And
Hmm.
oftentimes what people say is like, you've made this thing that I love into like you've taken, say, the joy out of it or something, right? But then
Uh,
like it's like, yes, it is now a responsibility and you have deadlines and you have expectations. And it's like the real thing is getting over that hump as well and getting to the third one where you sort of synthesize both of those worlds where you have that love, that intrinsic sort of desire to do that thing while
yeah.
also incorporating the knowledge that like you have expectations for yourself and you have a responsibility to yourself to really practice.
Hmm. Yeah, you nailed it. You just nailed it. That's all of it, right there. We do what we do because we love it, and it's not always fun, but the love that we have for it covers over the struggle of getting out of bed and going into that practice room, and the rewards make it even that much more worthwhile.
Yeah, and what's funny is that the harder it is in those moments where it's difficult, the more
Hmm.
rewarding the payoff. Right?
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
just like exercising, just like any of that stuff, like that real struggle is like that is like the tension that gets you to the better, like the more rewarding thing at the end in a way.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. And there's something too about uh, going back to the sports thing. There is room for fun in there. I mean, we all know that if you've ever had a pickup game of ball, somebody's going to be talking trash. And it doesn't mean anything. It's just, you know, we're just having fun, And I think sometimes with music, it's okay to sort of have that levity. I remember we were talking about Kim. You asked me like what it was like when I went to Berkeley. There were a few instructors that I had that they didn't mince words. Their heart was in the right place, but they kind of had a levity of saying saying something, but sarcastically. But there was a lot of truth in it. Like, hey, have you ever even seen a practice room? I mean, from the inside, or that tone knob on your guitar, that's there for a reason. Time's not just a magazine. Uh, you know, it's kind of funny, but we just kind of we accept that because it's just levity. It's no different than when the coach says, "Hey, what do you got? You got bricks in your shoes or something? Come on, get it going." Just to give you that extra. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think on some levels, I think that's healthy. I think as long as it's done with a spirit of levity and not a spirit of malice, that's like the whole competitive thing is just like I'm too old for that. So.
But on that note, I mean, not see, I don't think about athleticism as competition, though that is obviously there, right?
Mhm.
There is that there. We're all competitive, right? I mean,
Right, right.
okay, we all are. Come on, but I actually got together with a really great guitar player, and he was, I studied with him when I was younger, and it's kind of that situation where we became colleagues. I mean, a guy who has just ridiculous chops. And we like, what are you working on? And he's like, I'm working on my left hand, like do, do, do. And I'm like, and he's like, what are you working on? I'm like, my right hand, this, right? And it's like, even as long as all of us have been playing, it is a physical activity and it needs to be attended to.
Totally.
It needs to be
Totally.
attended to, just like any athlete.
Yep.
Go, like you're saying, I got to go out and stretch, and then you're going to get into your thing. So
Mm-hmm.
that is a reality of the instrument. It's a taskmaster. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm here and you got to deal with me. So
Right.
I think
Right.
that's the other thing is that the physicality of it, like keeping that up.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever, there's that phrase, like if I miss a day of practice, whatever, I notice or whatever. And then, if I miss 3 days of practice, the audience starts to notice, or whatever, how that progression goes. It's like, you've got to keep up on the instrument. It's a
Yeah.
beat.
It is, and I think it's healthy. I think it's healthy to have that mentality of I'll call it swag. You know what I mean? It's the same feeling you get when you see I don't know, say Judon or somebody from the Patriots or something like. You see him in the after game interview, and they're like, yeah, da 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 da. But you see him out on the field, and he's like, he's like tearing people apart. I mean, it's okay to have that. Yo, I got my guitar in hand, and I'm ready to come in and do some damage. Uh, and the words of Joe, Joe Stump, I'm ready to wreck the place. I, every now and then, I think it's okay because like you're right, Shell, there is some physicality in there, and you got to keep that up and have that mentality of I'm doing what I got to do and keep it up, keep it moving. So very true.
Jim, thank you so much for spending an hour with us and having
My
coffee.
pleasure. Yeah.
Do you have any final advice for the students who are listening, about to go on break for the winter?
Um, Final advice: maintain normalcy in your life during the break. Maintain normalcy through the remainder or whatever happens wherever this pandemic goes. Maintain normalcy. Just do whatever you can to, if it's getting out and taking a walk every day, do that. If it's doing yoga before you go to bed, do that. Whether you're at home, whether you're in your dorm room, um, keep keep the balance and do whatever you can to maintain some normalcy and learn how to cook. Uh, learn how to play a sport. Watch the Patriots. They're taking on who is it? The Titans, I think they are.
Yeah, the Titans, 1 o'clock. By
Yeah,
the time
yeah.
it airs, they'll probably have won. So we can just predict that, Jim. Just predict it.
Right, right. So yeah, I mean, there's music all around us. There's musical parallels all around us, and just be open to that. So, if I had more time, I could probably think of something a little bit more profound, but
That's pretty good.
I think
That's
that's
pretty
all I
good.
got right now. So,
After 1 cup of coffee, that's excellent. That's excellent. Thank you so much, Jim.
oh, you're very welcome.
And thank you, Cheryl Bailey, for being here. And thank you, Ian Steed. And we'll be with all of you on the next Coffee Talk.
Thanks. Take care.